As I sat alone in my dimly lit bedroom, surrounded by stacks of dusty books and creaking floorboards, I stumbled upon something that would change my life forever. It was an old laptop, tucked away in a forgotten corner of the attic, covered in cobwebs and grime. The screen was cracked and the keyboard was sticky with dried spills, but it still worked. And when I turned it on, I found myself sucked into a dark and terrifying world of the deep web. At first, everything seemed normal enough. I browsed through various forums and websites, reading about conspiracy theories and urban legends. But then, I stumbled upon a forum dedicated to the darkest corners of the internet. The posts were cryptic and ominous, speaking of ancient evils and forbidden knowledge. I dismissed them as mere fantasy, but one post caught my eye. It was a thread titled "The Red Room," and the users claimed that it was a place where you could find anything your heart desired, but for a price. I laughed it off as ridiculous, but curiosity got the better of me. I searched for the Red Room. After navigating through countless dead ends and fake links, I finally found it. The website was shrouded in darkness, and a low hum filled my speakers. A message popped up on the screen, inviting me to enter my request. I hesitated for a moment, wondering if this was some kind of prank or a trap. But my desire for adventure won out. I typed in my request. I want to see the most frightening thing imaginable. Then I hit enter. The room went black, and all I could hear was my own breathing. Suddenly a figure appeared before me, tall and imposing, its face obscured by shadows. It spoke to me in a voice that sent chills down my spine, offering me a glimpse into the depths of madness and terror. I tried to back away, but my feet felt rooted into the spot. The figure leaned closer, its breath cold and rank, and whispered something in my ear. I can never remember what it said, but I knew that it was the last thing I ever wanted to hear. When I finally woke up, I was laying in bed, drenched in sweat and trembling uncontrollably. My heart raced and my mind reeled with thoughts of what just happened. I knew that I'd been given a glimpse into a realm far beyond our reality, a place where sanity is lost and nightmares come alive. I vowed to never return to that accursed site, but even now, I know that I will never forget what I saw in the Red Room. When my friend first introduced me to the dark web, I was amazed at how such an unknown thing could house some of the most illegal things on Earth. Up until today, I had only used it for learning how to code and commit small crimes. But after the horrifying videos I just found, I don't think I'll ever use the dark web again. I first met my best friend Alex a little bit after I got into high school. My parents had moved us to a new town and I had no friends. It was lonely at first, but I got used to it. We moved because they were paranoid after many murders occurred in my town. I thought this was weird, moving across the country over that, but I let it go. The reason Alex and I became friends so quickly was because we both had a shared interest in the internet and everything it had to offer. I was a gaming addict and a tier 3 Pokemon subscriber, while he was more of a coder and developer. 2 years later, we were still best friends, but now we were much older and smarter. Alex had discovered the dark web and he was obsessed with it. He pretty much spent every hour of the day on it, searching through anything you could imagine. There was nothing wrong with this, but one search he made was the biggest mistake of his entire life. I remember waking up to dozens of text messages from him one morning. This wasn't normal. Alex wasn't a very social person, and it was very hard to get words out of him. I opened my phone to see what the messages had to say. Dude, Jack, you have to come over right now. This is important. Jack, wake up. This is urgent. Where are you? These were only some of the messages, but the rest were very similar, with them all being urgent and that I needed to go to his house immediately. My parents were both still at work, so I went to Alex's house. When I arrived, there were 4 cop cars parked in front of his house, and there were dozens of people and news vans standing out front. I made my way through the crowd, and Alex's mother told the police to let me inside. I could see the tears rolling down her cheeks as she opened the door. "What's going on, Miss Gonzalez?" I asked. "Alex is missing," she said and started crying. My heart sank. How could this happen? He just texted me earlier this morning. That is when it hit me. What if he was trying to warn me? What if his messages were related to his disappearance? Still in shock, I walked up to one of the detectives in the kitchen. "Is Alex gonna be okay?" I asked. "Of course he is. He's gonna be just fine. We're gonna find him very soon," the detective responded. Something about that response was off. It was like I knew he was wrong. Deep down, I had this slight feeling that I wasn't going to see him ever again. I remembered the text messages, however, and pulled out my phone to show the detective. "He texted me this morning. What if it has something to do with him going missing?" I said. As he began reading them, his position quickly changed. It was like it got worse. He told me they needed to keep my phone for now to investigate the text messages, and said they would give it back to me later. I stayed around the house for a while, not just because I missed Alex, but because I wanted to comfort his parents. They cared about me a lot, and it hurt to see them like that. His mother couldn't stop crying. Eventually, however, I went into Alex's room to see if I could find anything that might give me a clue about why he went missing. I searched through everything, but I found nothing. But then, I noticed something. Alex's computer was on, but his monitor was turned off. I looked for the button to turn it on and hit it. As the screen lit up, my heart sank. He was on the dark web. Obviously, this was normal, but for some reason, he had several of different tabs open. I knew this wasn't normal. So I closed the door, locked it, and began going through them. At first, it was all pretty usual for him. But then things started to get weird. He had a tab open that was an article about a murder that happened several years ago. The article said that it was a woman who was found dead in her apartment. Her body was mutilated, cut up, and covered in acid. I nearly threw up reading it, seeing the horrifying pictures on the crime scene. Not wanting to see any of it anymore, I switched the tab just to reveal another article about another murder. Confused, I quickly went through the rest of the tabs he had opened, and they were all the same thing. They were all about some type of murder or crime. The one that stuck out the most to me, however, was one about a murder that happened 2 years ago. At first it seemed pretty normal, but as I read further, I realized what it was. It was about the murder of our neighbor that prompted us to move away. Confusion quickly swept over me. How did Alex know about this? I never told him about it because to me, it wasn't that important. I figured it must have just been a strange coincidence. But then when I saw the last search, it was my last name. Horrified and confused, I quickly stumbled out of the room and back into the living room. "Is everything all right?" Alex's mother said. "Yeah, I just need to go home for dinner," I responded. On the way home, I had so many questions flowing throughout my mind. Why was he searching up my last name? Did he think that I had something to do with this? That must have been why he was texting me so frantically that morning. Only I could just explain to him that I didn't do anything wrong. But I couldn't. He was still missing, and I had to find out why. When I got home, I raced up to my room, slammed the bedroom door shut, and got on my computer. I loaded up my Tor browser, turned on my VPN. I knew what I had to do. I began typing my last name, becoming more nervous after every letter. When I finally hit enter, nothing happened. It was just a blank screen. Confused, I refreshed the page, and once again, there was nothing. Why did Alex search? There was nothing. I thought to myself, there must be something out there. I was getting ready to close out the tab thinking I had ran into a dead end, when suddenly the page started to load. It took several minutes, but finally it loaded to reveal hundreds of videos. Immediately I knew what they were. They were murders. But why did they show up when they searched my last name? I considered just stopping right there and turning back, knowing the horrifying things I would see if I continued on. But I couldn't. I knew this had to be why Alex went missing, so I clicked on the first video. As it started playing, I saw what looked like a woman strapped to a chair in some sort of basement or something. I quickly recognized who it was. It was our neighbor from 2 years ago. I could tell because she had the same heart-shaped tattoo on her neck. She sat there for a minute, struggling, panicking, screaming for someone to help. However, suddenly 2 figures walked into the frame. At first, I couldn't tell who they were. But as they turned around to face the camera, my heart sank. It was my parents. My father was holding a knife, while my mother was holding a small scalpel. They paused for a moment before they started what was the most horrifying 5 minutes of my entire life. I watched as they cut into her and listened as she begged for mercy, screaming the whole time. Blood filled the room as she took her last breath. When the video ended, they quickly went to another, revealing the same exact room and chair I'd seen before. I was traumatized by what I had already seen, and I knew I couldn't watch any more of it. My parents were murderers, and I now knew the reason we moved away 2 years ago. I knew there was something off about that, but I just never could have imagined that this was the horrifying secret that they had been hiding from me. This whole time, I thought Alex was trying to accuse me of being responsible for these murders, but I was so wrong. He was trying to warn me. I scanned through more of the videos, each in the exact same room with the same exact chair. I was just about finished, ready to go to the police so that I could tell them what I had just seen when I noticed something. There was a new video uploaded today on that website. I quickly clicked on it and pressed play to reveal what looked like a man this time, strapped to the chair. He had a sack over his face, and I could tell who it was. Once again, however, I saw my parents walk into the frame. My father walked up to the man and pulled the sack off his head. At first, I couldn't tell who it was, but then I realized who I was looking at. It was Alex. I had always been aware of the deep web. You hear the craziest, most fucked up stories from people who have the balls to explore it. Websites that involve human experimentation, hiring a hitman, and even watching people through their own security cameras. It's fucked up. But honestly, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't just slightly interested. Now, just to point out, there was no malicious intent behind my exploration of the deep web. I was just curious to see if it really was as bad as people said it was. The first thing I stumbled upon was a website extremely centered around death, which gave me a really uneasy feeling, so I didn't hang around that web page very long. It takes quite a bit to freak me out, so it's safe to say I was a little surprised that I couldn't even stomach the first website I clicked on. But hey, it's not supposed to be all unicorns and rainbows, right? Next, I clicked on a website that was dedicated to watching people through security cameras. Most of the screen showed empty living rooms and patios. Some of them even showed oddly filled rooms, like rooms that were packed with stuffed animals and eerily decorated with fucking Christmas lights and fake Santa Claus statues. Another screen showed a young lady doing yoga. That one had a lot of views. I didn't watch that one very long though. Something inside me just felt ill and wrong. Like, what was I doing? That's sickening. I shook my head, blinking away more curiosity before I hovered my mouse over the tiny X to close the window. Right before I pressed the mouse, I saw a blue link under a black screen that said, "Proceed with caution." I bit down on my back teeth, yelling internally to leave the page. Don't click the link. It's not worth it. It could be murder. What if it was someone skinning an animal or some shit like that? But then again, what if it wasn't? I don't know what the hell propelled me to move my mouse away from the video, hovering it over the link instead. That's where I ended up. My curiosity always got the best of me. And no matter how twisted my stomach felt, or how strong the feeling of dread was that lingered right over my head, I had to know. I really just had to know what the link led to, or I would go crazy until I finally figured it out. So I pressed my mouse down and watched the link turn purple. Felt my mouth go dry and watched as the screen slowly loaded. The page was just comprised of a large link, like the security camera page, only it was just one. The room was concrete and it was dark. There must have been a night vision camera or something, because everything had a weird blue-green tint. But you could tell there was little to no light. There was a dark liquid on the floor and a medium-sized puddle. I told myself it was gasoline. Don't ask me why. Movement in the far right screen caught my attention. I immediately perked in my desk chair, inching my face closer to the screen of the laptop. It looked like an arm, like someone's forearm. They were just standing there, not really moving, but swaying. Just enough to not look completely still. "Hey," I said before shaking my head and slapping my mouth shut. Stupid. Then the person walked. They walked over towards the left of the screen. I felt my stomach knot. Felt my throat tingle and tighten. Bile rising in the back of my throat. I knew my mouth was open, gaping, and my eyes were wide. Face screwed up. It was a young woman. She looked like she could not be older than 25 or so. Long, dark, dirty hair was in tangles, like she'd been pulling at it. Her leg was dragging, her other skinny leg doing most of the work as she limped weakly. Her head was down, looking at the floor, and the sound of her dragging foot across the concrete echoed in my room. I didn't think it could get any worse. I was so fucking wrong. Suddenly, the woman raised her head, and it looked like it weighed a ton on her tiny body. I hadn't noticed it before, only able to make out the side profile. But now it was clear as day. She looked around, eyes watering with tears and black makeup streaming down her face. Small strands of bloody red were intertwined in her lips. Messily tied, locking them together, dark blood stained on her chin, probably from where she tried desperately to open her mouth to scream. Before realizing she couldn't, her dainty fingers were strained as well. Same color as the puddle on the concrete. My whole body felt weak. My stomach was sick. I tried to tell myself it was fake, that it was all just a big hoax. My eyes scanned to the bottom left of the screen. 5,623. That's how many people were watching. Unable to fight it any longer, I ran straight to the bathroom, threw everything up. Everything in me felt disgusting, wrong, twisted. Once I was done, I laid on the floor in the bathroom, letting the cool towels try and soothe my burning body. My head was spinning. I kept repeating to myself over and over in my head that I shouldn't have clicked on that link. I should have just left. Shouldn't have fucking closed the window. Should I get the link and send it to the police? Should I call them? My first instinct was to copy and paste the link just in case, then call the police and inform them of what was happening. Maybe they could trace the IP address or something. Maybe they would recognize the girl and know where to start looking. Maybe I could save her life. I'd feel really fucking dumb if this was all fake just to get viewers. But I wasn't about to gamble, not with what was at stake. I ignored the dizzy feeling flooding my head as I jumped up, grabbing the doorknob and twisting it a bit too harshly. When I flung the door open, my phone buzzed in my pocket, scaring the living shit out of me. I stopped mid-panic and picked it up with shaky hands. I saw my girlfriend's name and immediately answered. My voice was a complete wreck. My eyes finding the screen where the girl shrunk down to the ground. The sound of her cries bouncing around the room, making my body feel rigid. I had nothing left to throw up, but I still felt so sick. Madeline, you're not gonna believe what I just fucking saw. What? You? Are you okay? Have you been crying? No, I'm not okay, I answered, averting my eyes from the screen. I know you said to stay away from the deep web, but are you kidding me? Her voice went from caring to mad in a split second. I told you to stay away from that place. You never listen to me. You never fucking do. There's a girl, I said weakly. She's trapped in some sort of basement or something. Her mouth is like sewn shut. There's blood all over her face and hands. I don't know what to do, Madeline. The woman's cries got louder, more desperate but muffled. I'm so sorry. Close it out, clear your history, and never go back there again. I'm not kidding. But should I call? No. Her voice was stern now. You don't know if this is bullshit. It's probably staged to gain disgusting viewers, apparently like yourself. People do it all the time. That's why I said it'd be best if you stayed away from there. You could get yourself into a lot of trouble. I didn't say anything. Wordless. Walking back over to my desk, my hand shook as I raised my mouse to small X once again. My eyes watched the number of viewers slowly tick higher and higher. Before I closed the window, I felt even worse than before. We can file a report tomorrow, just in case. But for now, go to sleep and stay the fuck away. Can't believe he even went on there in the first place. I Didn't have the energy to argue with her. Guilt plagued my whole body, drowning me. It was all I could feel. I told her good night and that I was sorry and that I loved her before I hung up and made my way to the couch. Or try and sleep. It didn't feel right even being in my bedroom or anywhere near my computer. Not while that girl was still trapped, unable to scream for help, unable to talk at all. I know it could be fake, but was that really a risk I was willing to take? I looked up some Google searches over what was fake on the deep web and read multiple stories about staged webcam videos, which made me feel a little bit better. Didn't make the sick, guilty feeling go away though. It's safe to say that I didn't get much sleep. Every time I closed my eyes or even began to drift off, I would see the woman's face. The thread laced into her lips, the blood stained on her mouth, her fingers, the floor. I continued to grow more and more anxious and uneasy, deciding that maybe getting out of the house, heading over to my local CVS, picking up some melatonin might help. I threw my blanket off, slid on my shoes, and grabbed my keys and wallet from the nightstand. The cool air felt amazing and did wonders to calm the whirlwind of thoughts in my head. I went to check the time, realizing I'd left my phone at home. Not a huge deal. The store was only a few minutes away from the house. I ended up buying melatonin and a stronger sleeping pill just in case those didn't work. I also got a pack of bottled water to help rehydrate after I vomited all night last night. By the time I got home, I felt much, much better, which lasted about 3 seconds before I noticed that my front door was wide open. Now, I may have been in a state of shock and panic, but I never leave my front door open or even unlocked. My heart immediately began to race. I got out the car, closing the door quietly, and unlocking my trunk, grabbing the crowbar that I kept in there. "Who's there?" I yelled into the house, waiting for any noise. Who is in there? My own voice was shaking and weak. I was met with complete silence, keeping the crowbar up and ready to strike. I walked to the couch and felt for my phone. As soon as I found it, I hit the emergency button, waited until I got a hold of a 911 operator, letting her know what I think my house was just broken into. She told me police are on the way. After checking around the house for anything odd, I decided to give my girlfriend a call, letting her know what had just happened. The phone rang, and then rang some more. After getting a voicemail, I hung up, knowing that she'd probably be asleep this late at night. I waited for about 20 or so minutes for the police to show up, and walking around with them like a scared puppy as they checked every room. They ended up just having me fill out a report, telling me they'll keep patrol cars around the area just in case anyone else gets hit. As they were leaving, I checked to see if Madeline had called back yet. There wasn't any missed calls. However, I did notice several outgoing calls to her cell phone. Outgoing call to Madeline, 3:12 a.m. Outgoing call to Madeline, 3:14 a.m. Outgoing call to Madeline, 3:17 a.m. Outgoing call to Madeline, 3:20 a.m. Then there was another at 3:56 a.m., which was about the time I'd gotten home. My mind went into an automatic panic, knowing that for a fact I did not make those calls. I quickly checked my text, reading one I'd apparently sent out at 3:23 a.m. "Hey, can't sleep, gonna come over. I'm leaving the back door unlocked so I can get in." Didn't send that message. My stomach dropped. My heart thudded loudly in my chest as I noticed her reply directly underneath. Sorry, I was sleeping. Thanks for waking me up, by the way. Lose your key again? It's unlocked. Don't be too late. Without a second thought, I jumped up, running to lock all the doors and windows in my house, keeping the crowbar tight in my hand as I ran to my car. I drove as fast as my little Civic would go, all the way to her house, ignoring any stoplights. It took me only 3 minutes to get there, but I knew I was still too late. I made my way to her back door, feeling every cell in my body burn when I saw that it was wide open. My face was hot, my hands were shaking, but I stepped in, crowbar raised like a bat, ready to swing. I tried to keep my emotions at bay as I looked around her dark house. Madeline? I called out. Are you okay, babe? Nothing. Silence. Madeline? A small scream came from her bedroom, from upstairs. My legs jerked to run as I flew up the stairs, slamming her door open. I looked at her empty bed, her empty room, confused. I heard the scream again, only this time I heard that it was coming through her computer monitor. I felt numb as I looked at the screen, noticing the same website I saw earlier. Only instead of the woman I saw two. The first was lying on the floor, not moving, in that puddle of dark liquid. I recognized the second girl, just as I had recognized her voice. My heart shattered as I saw her face, streaked in blood, same threading sewn into her eyelids, locking them shut. Her scream hit my bones, surrounded my body. It was all I could hear. Her face was twisted, pure terror. I cried, I cried, I cried. I locked my jaw, picking up my cell phone, calling 911 for the second time. Only this time, it barely rang once, before the deep, gravely voice of another man answered. You should not have called. Chills shot down my body as I heard the phone thud as it hit the carpet floor. My breath hitched in my throat as I bent to pick the phone up, hanging up the call, and racing down the stairs. How did he do that? How did he redirect my call away from the police? I felt my heart race as I darted out her back door. In a frenzy as I sprinted to the closest house, I pounded on the door, screaming at the top of my lungs until the neighbor opened it. Her face was tired, confused, and scared. She let me in, and I explained through frantic tears what was happening. I'm typing this on my phone to post as we both try to get a uphold of the cops, but neither of our calls are going through, and neither is her landline. I think someone is messing with our cellular signal. They may have cut her line. But we're gonna keep trying. I'm scared for me. I'm scared for my girlfriend. And I'm scared for my neighbor. I don't know what's gonna happen to me. If you don't hear from me again, please take this advice and this experience to heart. Stay away from the deep web. For fuck's sake, please stay from the deep web. I'm posting this here because the dream I had last night sounds like something out of a horror movie. It was like a nightmare of the devil. Last night, I had a nightmare. I don't remember all of it, but I can remember some things clearly that I don't want to. It's kind of scaring me. I dreamt I was in a house with a family I've never seen before. I was the oldest brother. Something happened, and I can't remember all the details, but I can remember that the floor was broken, and I could see down into the basement. There was a massive cage down there, and it was what looked like some guy. He didn't have half of his body. He was just a torso. I think he was the devil because in my dream, he used some sort of magic to pull my dream brother down into the basement and right on top of the cage. Once my brother hit the top of the cage, the man transformed into some sort of half man, half woman thing, and half I don't even want to know. He ate my dream brother whole. The last thing that I remember was him screaming, "No, please!" then seeing that flat sack inflate, and I watched as he was disintegrated by that creature's gastric juices. But he didn't die. Every time he disintegrated, he would be remade, wholly inside, and would then disintegrate again in a non-stop cycle of being consumed. What the heck did I do to deserve a dream like this? We should have never entered the catacombs beneath Paris. The air was thick with the scent of decay, and the narrow stone corridors echoed with the drip, drip, drip of ancient water. But the curiosity has a way of leading fools to their doom, doesn't it? I still remember the moment the dust stirred as we uncovered the spores, mold that had waited forever for fresh lungs. It was Bastion first who coughed, a dry, hacking sound that bounced eerily off the walls. Then one by one, we all followed, gasping, choking, unable to stop the invisible tendrils from winding their way into our systems. At first, it was the memories. They slipped into my mind so gently that I mistook them for my own. I remembered places I've never been, saw through eyes that weren't mine. I was inside my friends' minds, experiencing their joys, their fears, the intimate moments of their lives. The shock was gut-wrenching. Then came the pain. It wasn't mine, no. It was Elodie's. Her migraine, a crushing vice around the skull, shared generously among us. It was then we realized what had happened. The spores had bound us together, not just in memory, but in body and soul. The escape from those cursed tunnels was a nightmare. Every scrape and fall was felt by all. When Matthew twisted his ankle, the shared agony almost brought us to our knees. But the worst was the fear, multiplied by 4. A looping feedback that grew with each shadow and echo in that god-forsaken labyrinth. Getting out into the open air didn't help as we'd hoped. The connection didn't fade as we prayed it would. Instead, it solidified, deepened. We became unable to function alone. We moved together, ate together, slept together. Individuality was slipping away, a sandcastle at high tide. Then the thoughts weren't just shared, they were merged. All of our voices in a single choir, growing louder, drowning out who we used to be. I could feel myself fading, becoming just another voice in the chorus, fighting to remember my own name. The breaking point came when we couldn't stand the sounds of our own thoughts anymore. It was Mark who suggested it at first, a dark whisper in the back of our minds. If one of us ended it, would the connection break? Would the rest regain their solitude? We pondered, hesitated, then silently agreed. But who would make the sacrifice? Who could? We drew straws, barbaric lottery for such a modern curse. It was Matthew who drew the short one. The decision made, the act was swift. A tragic finale on a moonless night by the river's edge. But the release didn't come. Instead, his final scream, his ultimate fear, echoed endlessly in our minds, a loop that wouldn't cease. It was then we understood. The hive didn't diminish, grew hungry. Now we avoid each other, desperate to not add more to the collective, but the solitude is a lie. For even as I write this, I can feel them, hear them inside my head. They're waiting, always waiting, for the echoes to consume us all. My mind was plagued with the thoughts of my wife's infidelities as I barreled down the dark country road in my truck. I loved her, but hated the way she treated me, and the fact that she slept with my best friend made it all the worst. I was too caught up in my thoughts to notice the man walking down the middle of the road. I slammed on my brakes and closed my eyes before the truck came to a stop. I jumped from my truck, and to my relief, there was no sign anyone was hit. As I searched around, I was suddenly startled by the sound of footsteps behind me. "I hear you're having trouble with your wife." "Sorry, do I know you?" I asked as I tried to make out who the dark figure was. "What do you truly desire?" My head started to spin as I was overcome by a feeling of euphoria. "I want whoever sleeps with my wife to die a slow and painful death." As the words left my mouth, it felt like someone else was saying them. Before I knew it, I was back behind the wheel of my truck. I had written off my strange encounter as a fever dream. As the days passed, I got word that my treacherous best friend had gotten sick and was close to death. Over the coming weeks, my neighbor was hospitalized with the same mystery illness my friend had, along with 3 other people from the street I lived on, including the man who delivered our post. Days went by and news of men getting sick and dying all over town continued to trickle in. Suddenly I was hit with the realization that the man I met a few weeks ago wasn't a figment of my imagination. I got in my truck and began driving the same road as before. I was riddled with guilt, knowing it was my fault people were dying. I slowed my truck as the same dark figure appeared in the middle of the road. Feeling desperate, I fell to my knees in a flood of tears. "Please, I beg you, whatever you have done, you need to take it back. What is it you truly desire?" "All I want is my wife to love me and only me," I begged. As I walked in my front door, Suzanne was standing there waiting for me. "I love you so much, Jack. Can you please forgive me?" "Of course I can forgive you. I always do. From now on, you're the only man I want and need." After we spent the night making passionate love, I woke up the following morning feeling like death. Suddenly, the terrifying realization of the first wish hit me like a ton of bricks. I write this as I'm in the final throes of death, as a warning to others. Be careful what you wish for. I never considered myself superstitious, but my perspective changed last week. I recently moved into a small old apartment in a quiet part of town. The building had a certain charm with its creaky floors and antique fixtures, and the rent was too good to pass up. Everything was fine until I found the diary. It was tucked away in a hidden compartment beneath a loose floorboard in the bedroom. The leather cover was worn, and all the pages were yellowed with age. Curious, I started to read. The diary belonged to a woman named Eliza, who had lived in the apartment in the 1920s. Her entries started out mundane. notes about her daily life, her love for gardening, and her fondness of the apartment. But as I read further, the entries grew darker. Lisa wrote about strange occurrences, objects moving on their own, whispers in the night, and a reoccurring nightmare about a shadowy figure standing at the foot of the bed. One entry in particular stood out. Elisa described how she had discovered a small door behind the wallpaper in the living room. She claimed that when she opened it, she found a narrow, pitch-black corridor that seemed to go on forever. She wrote about her hearing whispers, urging her to come inside, but she always closed the door before she would follow. I was both intrigued and unnerved. I decided to see if the door was still there. It took me a while, but I eventually found a faint outline behind the wallpaper, just as Elisa has described. My heart raced as I peeled back the wallpaper, revealing a small wooden door. With a deep breath, I opened it. The corridor beyond was exactly as Elisa had written, narrow and impossibly dark. I grabbed a flashlight and stepped inside, the beam barely cutting through the thick darkness. The whispers began almost immediately, faint and distant at first, but growing louder with each step I took. The corridor twisted and turned, seemingly without an end. I lost track of time and distance. The air grew colder, and the whispers more urgent. I was about to turn back when I saw faint light up ahead. I quickened my pace, desperate to find the source. The corridor opened into a small, dimly lit room. In the center was a single flickering candle, and beside it, a mirror. The whispers stopped abruptly, replaced by a heavy silence. I approached the mirror and saw my reflection, or at least, I thought it was my reflection. The figure in the mirror looked like me, but there was something wrong. Its eyes were hollow, and its mouth twisted into a sinister smile. Before I could react, the figure stepped out of the mirror and into the room. I turned and ran, the cold air biting at my skin and the sound of footsteps echoing behind me. I didn't stop until I was back in my apartment, slamming the door shut and collapsing on the floor. I haven't opened the door since. The diary disappeared, and the whispers have stopped, but I can't shake the feeling that something followed me back. If you ever find a hidden door in an old apartment, leave it alone. Some things are better left undiscovered. I never believed in urban legends, but this one got me. It started when I found an old VHS tape at a flea market. The label was blank, but curiosity got the best of me. That night, I dusted off my old VCR and popped the tape in. The screen flickered, and for a moment, I thought it was blank. Then, grainy footage of a room appeared. The camera was shaky, as if someone was filming with an unsteady hand. The room was empty except for a single chair in the center. As I watched, a figure slowly entered the frame. It was a man, his face obscured by shadow, wearing outdated clothes that looked like they were from the 80s. He sat in the chair, staring directly into the camera. For what felt like hours, he just sat there, unblinking. Just as I was about to turn it off, the man spoke. His voice was distorted, like a bad recording. If you're watching this, it's already too late. See? This tape is cursed. It shows you the last thing you'll see before you die. I laughed nervously, but a chill ran down my spine. The screen went black, then the footage cut to a different room. My room. I stared in disbelief as the camera panned around, showing every detail. The unmade bed, the posters on the wall, even the pile of laundry in the corner. Then, the camera turned to show the door. Slowly, it creaked open. My heart raced as I watched a figure step into the room. It was the same man from the first clip, but this time, his face was clear, pale, gaunt, with hollow, black eyes. I heard a noise behind me and whipped around. There was nothing there. I turned back to the screen and the man was closer now, almost at the foot of my bed. My breath caught in my throat as he reached out, pointing directly at me through the screen. Suddenly, the screen went black. I sat there trembling, trying to rationalize what I'd just seen. Maybe it was a prank, I thought. Maybe someone was messing with me. But then I heard the floorboards creak, the same creak I'd just heard on the tape. I slowly turned around, my heart pounding in my ears. The door to my room was slowly opening. The last thing I saw was a pair of hollow, black eyes staring at me. If you ever find an unmarked VHS tape, do yourself a favor. Leave it alone. My brother disappeared into the dark web. When my brother Noel went missing last year, the police were of little help. They told us not to worry, that it was far more difficult to disappear than it was made to look on TV or in the movies. Most people turn up on their own after a while, and their families find out or pretend to find out that the missing person's life was a little less respectable than they had claimed. A little bit darker and more mysterious. Some people live two lives, and nobody knows it but them. I did my own research and found this was true. According to statistics, the chance of abduction by a stranger was less probable than being struck by lightning. You were much more likely to be kidnapped by someone you knew, and far more likely still to not be kidnapped at all. But despite their vague occurrences and unfounded assumptions, Noel never did come back. The weeks and months went by and there was no word. It seemed like the police had given up or forgotten about him. Digging through his belongings, I tried desperately to find something that would give me a clue to his whereabouts. His computer was the best bet, I figured, since it was where he spent the majority of his time. Noel had worked as a database specialist for a big company named Proteon, and despite the fact that he had explained what he did to me a number of times, I never could properly figure it out. If people asked, I told them that he was a computer programmer, since that was at least something most people could understand. He was an expert at assembling and troubleshooting computers, since my dad had owned a PC repair business when we were kids, and Noel had taken quickly to technology as a child. He was building machines for my dad's customers in his spare time when he was still in his teens. Later, he went to college for computer sciences and only became more proficient over the years. Lately, he'd been experimenting with app designing in his spare time and had gotten pretty good at it. He had told me he was working on one app in particular that was extremely different from anything else in the market. I hoped the other programmer that he'd been working with would know something, but I tracked him down and that resulted in a dead end as well. Upon meeting the guy, I found he was particular, disheveled-looking Satanist who refused to make eye contact with me and offered no useful information. He told me Noel had been of great help in this project, but said the rest was top secret. I went home defeated once again. Noel's old computer was set up on my desk, so I turned it on and sat down, resolved to do some more digging. I logged into his email. Luckily, Google had saved all his passwords, so I didn't need to figure them out through impossible guesswork. Searching through his old emails, I had found a lot of junk mail. There was correspondence with work and family and a few friends, but nothing that gave me any clue as to where he might be. If anything, they painted the picture of someone living an ordinary life, making plans for the future with no indication of wanting to disappear. His phone had been left behind too, and I went through that as well, looking for anything strange that stood out. But there was nothing. I sat there at my desk with the mouse in my hand for days, and then weeks, looking for something, anything of use. I poured through his DOC files, and JPEGs, and MP4s, and MP3s, PDFs, and every other damn file you can imagine. Examining everything, desperately searching for some hint, some clue. Everything turned out to be a dead end. Of course I called the police frequently as well, but they were of no help and eventually went so far as to tell me to stop calling, saying they would update me if they found anything. I had cursed at them furiously and hung up. That had been the end of that. I went back on his computer one night to dig through some more file folders, and I noticed something that my eyes had scanned over in the past. An icon in the sea of icons that lived on the busy and disorganized desktop. It looked a bit like a purple onion with a slice cut out of it. I clicked on it. A dialog box with a loading bar appeared briefly. Then a purple window opened up that looked like a browser. I then realized exactly what it was. Tor browser, it said at the top. I knew little about these things, but understood that this was an untraceable way to use the internet, since it encrypted everything being done online. Thinking back, I remembered Noel talking about using Tor. He said it was much safer and couldn't be traced, but why would he care about being traced? I thought at the time. Maybe there was a good reason after all. Suddenly my cell phone chimed and I went over to it quickly and looked at the message. It was a URL. Another text came through. This one was a typed message from someone. Enter the URL on Tor. Another ding. Another message. Tell no one about this. If you contact anybody, I'm gone. I'm your only chance at finding him. I looked at Noel's computer. That's when I noticed the little lens at the top of his monitor that was the built-in webcam. The red light was on next to it, indicating it was recording. Someone was watching me, and they could see what I was doing on the computer as well. I was sure of it. I texted back, doing it now. After typing in the URL exactly as instructed, the screen turned into a login for a website of some kind. I've received another text. Password is his favorite movie. You have 2 minutes. I didn't need 2 minutes for that at least, since I knew it was Fight Club, as it had been since that movie had been released. My hands were shaking as I typed the password into the box. I was beginning to feel very concerned, but also a bit hopeful at this sudden turn of events. A chat window opened up and a message promptly appeared from someone named Shadowcat. Shadowcat, you're his brother, I take it? I typed back a response quickly, afraid of losing whoever this was. It felt like they could disappear at any second, back into the ether, and I would never find them again. Mark? Yes. Do you know where he is? Shadowcat. Yes. I was a little confused as to why my name was appearing in the chat window as Mark, since that wasn't my name and I never had entered any identifiers. Was that an alias that Noel used online, I wondered? Mark, is he okay? I took a deep breath waiting for the answer. Shadowcat, more or less. Mark, what do you want? Shadowcat, you'll find out soon enough. Another message came through showing another URL. Shadowcat, keep chat open, create a new window and go to the URL. Mark, okay. I typed in the URL and found myself at another website. It was a bit like eBay, except instead of selling old records and jewelry, people were selling guns, explosives, drugs, and some very disturbing categories of pornography. Mark, what the hell is this? Shadowcat, never mind your questions for now. Do what I say, or he dies. Suddenly, an image appeared, replacing the chat window. It showed my brother Noel chained to a wall in a stress position. He was blindfolded and gagged, but I could hear his muffled screams for help. My hands were shaking nearly uncontrollably now, and I had to type and retype my reply several times before it made any sense. Mark, how do I know you'll give him back? Shadowcat, trust me or don't, the choice is yours. If you refuse, he dies. If you do what I say, I will give him back to you unharmed. It seemed like there was no other option. I felt trapped and hopeless, depressed in the situation I had found myself in. If I called the police, he would see me do it on the webcam. If I said no, he would kill Noel. Shadowcat, you have 10 seconds to decide. A countdown began on the screen. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. Mark, okay. Shadowcat, good. Here's your shopping list. Get everything on it. A long list of items was included next, and my eyes widened further as I read through it. Mark, what the hell is this for? What are you planning to do? The chat window closed suddenly, and I was left alone in my living room, my heart beating fast and hard in my chest. Only the other website remained now, the one with the black market guns and explosives and everything else illegal that you could have delivered to your doorstep. I debated calling the police again, telling them these new developments, or even going to the police station. But what if the kidnapper found out? He obviously had ways to spy on me. Probably you'll say I'm an idiot for what I did next, but I really wanted to get my brother back. So I filled the online shopping cart with the requested illicit items and entered my credit card information, cringing as I hit enter. I guess I would have to cancel my credit card since I didn't trust the vendors one bit, but at least that part was done. The package arrived in the mail surprisingly quick. As soon as I brought it inside, I got another text message. It invited me to another chat on Tor, where I was given a physical address. They said to meet them there with the package, and they would give me back my brother. I was to tell no one where I was going. It was dark by the time I arrived at the old warehouse in the industrial section of town. The place was abandoned, and there were no lights to illuminate the parking lot as I pulled in. My truck had some cargo in it that would surely get me a couple decades in prison, if not more. Terrified, I still sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel tightly with both hands despite the car being turned off. I had no idea what was going to happen next. My cell phone chimed and I nearly jumped out of my skin. It was a text message. Come inside through the east door. I did a bit of quick geography to determine which way I was facing and decided that the door I was looking at, right in front of me. Taking a deep breath, I got out of the car. I popped the trunk and grabbed the duffel bag I had brought with the illicit items packed inside. The gravel crunched beneath my feet as I made my way across the parking lot. My hand shook as I reached out and grabbed the doorknob, turned it, and went into the dark, cavernous space inside the warehouse. As difficult as it was to see outside, it was even darker in here. Taking a few more frightened steps forward, I found my eyes did not adjust to the darkness. The door clanged shut behind me, and I jumped, feeling my heart skip a beat. Hello? My voice echoed back at me. Did you bring everything? I jumped, startled, when I heard the voice. It was raspy and high-pitched and made the hair stand up on the back of my neck at the sound of it, like fingernails across a chalkboard. Yes? Good. Bring it this way. Terrified, I stepped forward into the pitch blackness, unsure if I would run into something. I moved slowly and deliberately, hoping not to hurt myself. He's got it for us. He has it all. Yes. Suddenly, I realized There was not just one voice speaking, but many. They were all around me, surrounding me in darkness. I felt their movements in the air around me and heard sounds like the wind blowing during a thunderstorm. Poisons, acid, knives, explosives, boomed a voice from the corner. Guns and bullets, snake venom. I heard them moving closer now, inching towards me. Their voices were in my ears as I backed away. Where is my brother? Show him to me, or you get nothing. I was terrified, but determined to get Noel back, come hell or high water. Or maybe we'll keep you as well, little brother. Maybe someone will want you back badly enough to bring us more offerings, more dark treasures. I could feel them very close now, could hear their breathing and feel their proximity to me, causing my skin to break out in goosebumps. My mind raced, desperate to think of what I could do to get out of here. These creatures, these demons, whatever they are, had no intention of letting me leave. I had a sudden brainstorm. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my cell phone. Quickly, I hit the button for the flashlight. If there was anything these creatures would be affected by, I guess by choice of habitat, it would be light. These demons are born of darkness, my lizard brain whispered. They are not accustomed to anything but blackness. White light cut through the darkness like a knife. I heard screams and saw a brief haze of smoke appear. Around the edges of the light, I caught glimpses of vague forms and humanoid shapes. They recoiled from the light, and I felt and heard them moving towards me from behind. Spinning, I cast the light just in time to see one of the demons nearly face to face with me. His form was massive and bear-like, huge fangs and long, sharp talons raised in the air, ready to slit my throat. His red flesh bubbled and burst open. He evaporated into a misty haze when the light hit him, screaming in a deafening baritone. Realizing that the light had the power to destroy them now, or at least to send them back to hell where they came from, I spun round and round with the light, trying to incinerate them all. I saw some flying like a bat away. Others jumped up to the high ceiling and hid in the beams above. I saw something at the other end of the huge space, and I shone my light in that direction. It was Noel. He was shackled to a wall on the far side of the warehouse. He was gagged and blindfolded, unmoving. I saw dark shadows around him, moving quickly, and I realized it was more demons guarding him. Running over towards him, I heard the sounds of more of them chasing after me, racing like monkeys across the steel beams above, matching my speed. I blasted the demons with the bright light from my phone as I got closer to them. Their shadow skin began to sizzle and burst into flame as they howled like banshees and moved away. There was no key for the chains holding him, but I was prepared. I grabbed the bolt cutters from my bag, a last-second impulse buy from my trip to the hardware store. Part of me was worried that the people I was dealing with would not let him free willingly. I had wanted any advantage I could get. The bolt cutters went through the chains with an effort, and the one holding his wrist snapped with a satisfying noise, and his arm fell limply to his side. Before I could think too much about what that meant, I spun around at the sudden movement behind me. I screamed as the claws of something terrible raked across my back. The demon disappeared back into the shadow above us, leaping into the air like a bat, and I saw him flapping his wings as he went back up to the rafters. I pulled the blindfold and the gag from Noel's face and saw that he was barely conscious. It felt terrible to do it, but I slapped him hard across the face to try and get him to wake up. He groaned and stirred, but didn't open his eyes. I felt a sharp pain in my neck suddenly, like knives there, and I spun around quickly to again catch it in the light. There was a hint of smoke as my flashlight caught the edge of it, but it was too fast and quickly disappeared again. I was suddenly feeling frantic and terrified for my life. They were becoming more bold. My hand stung after the next sharp slap to Noel's face, but it accomplished what I needed. He woke up and spit blood from his mouth. Ow! What the hell? Noel, wake up. You need to hold this light, move it around, keep them away. It took him a few seconds to understand, but I thrust the phone into his hand anyways and began to work on the chains holding his right wrist. His eyes were wide with fear and his gaze darted around the room as I continued working on the chains. The one holding his other wrist snapped with an effort, and I got down to the floor to work on the shackles attached to his ankles. He was moving the flashlight around frantically, but it seemed to be working. Warm blood trickled down my neck and my back from my injuries, and I felt it turn cold on my skin. How the hell did you wind up here? I asked once he finally freed from the chains. That damn Satanist programmer. He summoned those things from hell. What? How? Never mind, just let's get out of here. I took the flashlight back from him and used it as a weapon, shining it every direction, and often just in time as I saw the demons scatter from the light like cockroaches each time I swung it around. Once we reached the door, I threw it open to reveal the parking lot, and we ran from there as fast as we could back to the car. We had escaped, or so we thought. I wish I could say that everything is better now, that we fled from the demons in that warehouse and never saw them again. But those unnatural creatures knew no boundaries. They were not inclined to stay contained within the walls of that warehouse, and they were not pleased that we had escaped with their treasures, which I promptly dumped off at the police station, anonymously, of course. Although I got my brother back, neither one of us will feel safe again. The lights in my home stay on all hours of the day and night now. Noel is the same way. I sleep during the day and surround myself with lights at night, terrified until the sun comes up again. What am I afraid of, you ask? A blackout, a blown fuse, a burnt-out light bulb. And they happen more and more lately. Always, I see them in the shadows, waiting, watching, patient, waiting for their chance, for the darkness to fall. Has anybody heard of the ocean conspiracies? Now, I'm nobody special, but my uncle on my mother's side is. I've only met him a handful of times, but he was nice enough from what I can remember. Not terribly memorable, though. When I was younger, I really never knew what he actually did in terms of employment. My mother told me that he worked for the government. That's also what he told me himself. Really nothing beyond that. This wasn't really a cause for concern in my life. I mean, why should I have cared? I only started thinking about it after he disappeared. He stopped coming over for holidays, and my Skype conversations with him ceased completely. I went to my mother for answers, obviously, but she just said that he relocated. I was 16 at this point, and smart enough to realize that that blatant non-answer from her meant she wasn't going to talk about it. I started thinking that the worst had happened, that he'd been in an accident or something, and that my mother was grieving. But nobody else seemed to be talking about him. My dad and him were never particularly close, but you'd think he'd say something about it, right? In any case, I kind of forced myself to push this into the back of my head. If he really was gone, then I guess I'd have to move on. I wasn't terribly close with him either, after all. But then something happened a few months afterwards. It was around midnight, and being the slacker that I am, was up writing a paper for school. I took out my headphones and got up to use the washroom when I heard voices coming from downstairs. I assumed it was my parents, but I listened closer. The male voice was not my dad. It was my uncle. It sounded like he was arguing with my mom about something, but trying to keep it as quiet as possible. As I listened closer and began making out sentence fragments, stuff like, "I have to go, and they don't know how to fix it. I wasn't supposed to know." I kept hearing one word sprinkled throughout the entire duration in which he was talking. Ocean. I considered going down and seeing what was happening, but he left before I could make the decision. I heard him storm out the house and start his car before speeding off. I really did want to mention to my mom the following morning, but she was acting like nothing had even fucking happened. Obviously, there was some sketchy shit going on here. But did I really want to know? At the time, my answer was no. I still had my own life to live after all. If this was a rabbit hole that I didn't have to go down, then I wasn't going to. Fast forward 8 years, and I've moved out, landed a software development job, and I'm living by myself in the city. I hadn't really thought about my uncle since. I mean, it was kind of weird that nobody brought him up during family gatherings, but again, fuck that rabbit hole. However, I think I've changed my tune on that. It was a Thursday night and I was browsing the internet. I started off with Reddit, YouTube, before launching Tor to see if anything more interesting was on the dark web. I didn't find anything particularly noteworthy until I stumbled upon a forum where they were discussing a multitude of topics ranging from paranormal encounters to government conspiracies. There was one thread that caught my attention. Weird shit going on in the ocean. The ocean. Memories of my uncle flashed through my eyes. I had to read it. The basic gist of the discussion went something like this. The original poster had a brother with some vague government job who had gone missing recently. The night before, the brother showed up at their door, incredibly frantic and most incoherent. He was going on and on about something related to the ocean. Problem was, his speech was so fragmented that the OP couldn't scrape together any cognate meaning. Abruptly, he apologized before running off, leaving the OP stunned. His attempts to get in contact with his brother afterwards yielded nothing. He was a ghost. The only thing that the brother had given him was a thick set of paper documents that had been burned to the point of falling apart upon the slightest touch. He could only make out the first page, which simply had the words, "Ocean Conspiracies, Test Site CK-X9 Analysis." The comments were filled with people either calling his bluff, pretending to be government agents, or making theories. A few of the comments that I distinctly remember were these. Sorry for the offensive language if you care. I didn't write this. None of you fucking faggots better talk about this on the normie sites. They know what you're searching up. They know what you post, wherever you post it. Mention anything about these ocean conspiracies, they'll come after you. But here was the reply to the comment above. Just shows that you literally don't know what's going on here. People know about it. Not a lot, but they're out there. They don't give a shit about outsiders trying to search. They won't find anything. The only thing they care about are the people who know about it and can prove what is going on, like OP's brother probably was. What followed were a bunch of people asking him how he knew. And these were his replies. Look, I was never high clearance, so I only know about bare bones surface level shit. There's something going on in the Arctic and Pacific Oceans. Something weird. Maybe the Indian as well. Although I don't have confirmation on that. Hell, I don't have confirmation for any of this. It might all be a diversion. I've even heard rumors that it's only in the Dead Sea. But it's not just one thing. It's a bunch of shit that seems to be isolated, which worries them. They usually take place in the middle of nowhere, but there's been incidents near coastlines as well. What's going on? I don't know exactly. Like I said, bare bones. The fact that I'm aware something's going on at all makes me a liability. Even more, because I don't work there anymore. Of course, they're still tracking me, but I'm pretty sure they can't track this. I'll tell you about what I've heard though. One of the biggest things is that the government has very limited control here, and they can't always predict or contain whatever is going on. Also, calling them ocean conspiracies is like a diversion tactic. They're not really conspiracy theories if they're actually happening, right? They know this. They know what they're doing. Ignorance is bliss. It was a drilling project under the codename Heaven, out in some remote part of the Pacific. I'm not sure what they were drilling for, or if any drilling even happened at all. But I've been told that the water's shallow over there, like waist level shallow. That's the issue. The geography doesn't make any sense. 1 second there's infinite blackness below, and then suddenly you're standing on the surface. There's something wrong with that surface, I assume, but nobody ever found out what. The rig was decimated after a week, like an invincible fucking meteor had crashed into it or something. No surviving accounts. Apparently he saw what they refer to as giant spider-like things that walk on the water surface. The worst thing about them is their heads. They look to be wrapped in some kind of wet gauze, but their eyes can be seen through it. They're definitely human eyes. Alright, I really dislike talking about this shit, so I'll leave off with this. Something that happened at a beach resort in Mexico. A mother is watching her kid splash around in shallow water near the shore. No danger there, right? Suddenly, it looks as if the child gets pulled under. But it doesn't make any sense. The water was only up to her knees, but she completely disappears. The mother starts running towards where her child was, but she pops back up mere seconds later. Somewhat phased at first, she simply starts splashing around again, like nothing had even happened. However, there was a black marking on her arm that wasn't there before. A triangle with a square in it. Not cut like a scar, but like a permanent tattoo. I'm thinking that this one has to be related to the drilling rig. Look, there's a bunch of other shit that I'll post if I can get away with it, and if I feel like it. His comments ended there, but I've been monitoring that user for updates ever since. I've considered messaging him personally, but that's tentative for now. Not until I can get a better sense of what's going on here. Obviously, the OP's story about his brother kind of creeped me out, eerily resembling what happened with me and my uncle. I've been thinking about it some more. After he ran away, we did get a lot of his friends coming by. Almost always while I was home alone. I'm also not sure if I've been seeing indistinct men in suits at a higher rate than I should be. There's also this guy at my office who's been trying to hang out with me after work. But I've stared at his screen before. He's just typing gibberish. Maybe I've been in this rabbit hole for longer than I've known. What did my uncle do? What's going on in the ocean? I actually bought a mystery box off the deep web. One of the hottest trends on YouTube right now is ordering these random mystery boxes from complete strangers on the deep web and opening them on camera. I don't know why I didn't realize a clear majority of these videos are fake and staged for their scare factor, but I didn't. Thought it was a great idea and hopped on the bandwagon to claim my YouTube stardom that I desperately long for. For those who don't know a lot about the deep web, it's simply a part of the internet that isn't accessible from your basic Chrome, Firefox, or Explorer search engine. You must download the encryption program Tor and the Tor browser for starters. It's not illegal to access this part of the internet, but since it's anonymous, a great deal of illegal actions happen. The possibilities are endless. I grabbed my laptop I've had since I graduated in 2011 and downloaded the required programs. I prefer to use my laptop over my desktop in case of viruses and such. My 7-year-old laptop is a little more disposable. I had a little Bitcoin phase a few years ago when it was blowing up, so I had a little saved already. It wasn't much, only 0.1 Bitcoin, which translates to roughly $632, but it was good enough for what I was looking for. After the downloads were finished, I opened the browser and started my journey at the Hidden Wiki website. They provide a lot of useful links to get you started on the deep web. I scrolled through the warnings and gists of what it was and found the links I was looking for. Almost forgot, I muttered to myself as I grabbed the duct tape from my desk drawer. I cut a tiny square piece off the end and placed it over my webcam. Call me paranoid, but I'd rather be safe than sorry. I clicked on the first link and waited for what seemed like forever for the page to load. It was another very plain page with a list of popular websites that you could scroll through on the side. I continued my search through the web links until I found a page dedicated to mystery boxes. I wanted to find one around $500 so people knew I meant business on my channel. These were relatively small, staying around the 0.0125 to 0.05 Bitcoin range. I was worried about being scammed. I decided to continue my search after a quick bathroom break. When I came back, I noticed my cursor was off to the side and was able to click on a link that must have matched the background color of the web page because I didn't see it. I indulged in my curiosity and hit the link. I was taken to a pitch black page with small white text near the top. I'm selling one random package to anyone brave enough to receive it for only 0.12 Bitcoin or best offer. Only one, huh? I thought to myself. I'll shoot my shot. I hit the small payment button and was asked how much I'd like to spend. I entered 0.1 Bitcoin with fingers crossed. Payment went through without any hesitation, and I was instantly met with a chat box asking where I'd like my package sent. I know this wasn't a good idea, and I regret it to this day, but other YouTube channels use their own address often, so I thought nothing of it. I gave them my home address. I waited over a month for the box to come in, 36 days to be exact. It arrived directly on my front porch and was wrapped numerous times in red tape. I set my camera on the tripod and adjusted it to show me and the box on a small wooden table. I draped a sheet in the background so it looked a little more professional. I collected some gloves and scissors so I can bang the video out in one go. Hey everybody, welcome to tonight's vlog. Boy, do I have a surprise for you. I continue my monologue mentioning how I got the box and how much I paid. Without wasting further time, let's open this deep web mystery box. I grab the scissors and cut along the red tape. I make sure my gloves are on tight and I rip open the box. My brow furrows as I see just one book. Without saying a word, I take the book out of the box. I was pretty pissed I spent over $600 on a book. Well folks, looks like we got us a dud. These pages better be made of gold. The outside of the book was old, and it smelled of mildew and mold. I cracked the book open to see the first page and glanced over the contents. It's a photo album. Smells of old rot. Let's look at these pictures. I show the camera a view of the page contents. It has 4 pictures on the first page, all labeled by days. The first picture said day 1, the second day 2, and so on. The pictures were taken with an old Polaroid camera. There were pictures of airplanes, random suitcases, a couple of taxis, and some pretty shady motels. Looks like someone's old travel photos. I continued flipping through the pages. Every day was a different photo of nature or cars or trains. Day 18 held the oddest photo yet. It was just of a mask, handcuffs, a gag, and a bottle of some sort of drug it looked like. These people have one hell of a fetish. I try to keep the video interesting. I zoom into the picture with the camera so everyone can see it. Around day 32, things start getting really weird. There was a picture of a house, but not just any house. It was the house I grew up in, my parents' house. My hand covered my mouth as I gasped for air. How is this? I'm unable to form a sentence. I'm at a loss for words. Day 33. I turn the page and I see a man and woman handcuffed and gagged. I immediately expel the contents of my stomach as I see my own mom's scared, crying face, and my dad face first in a pile of what looked like black tar. Day 34. This photo is taken inside what looks like a vehicle. I focus my gaze to the dashboard, where a small photo is barely visible. It's an old school photo of me. There in my dad's truck. Day 35. Another house, but this one's much smaller. The photo is too blurry to make out the details. My hands are trembling, and all I can hear is my heartbeat pounding in my ears. I flip to the last page. I immediately throw the book on the ground and run to the window. I jiggle the hatch frantically and throw it open. Without hesitation, I jump out and run to the neighbors. As I'm running, I turn around for a brief second. What I saw haunts me to this day. A tall, hooded figure stood in my room, looking at me through the window. He stood motionless before lifting his hand and waving. I screamed for my neighbor, who hurried me inside and called the cops. I sat and just cried. I cried out of fear for my life. I cried for my parents. I cried because it was all my fault. My lack of common sense got my parents killed, and I will have to live with that forever. If you ever access the deep web, do not release any personal information. Even if people on YouTube do it, most of it's not real. And always check your boxes. It would have saved me a lot of trouble if I would have noticed the box I received had no tracking sticker on it. It was hand delivered. We ordered pizza from the dark web. It was the summer of my junior year when the events of this story took place. My brother and I were chilling at home playing Super Smash Bros. Brawl when we heard a knock on the door. I answered it to see our older brother standing at our doorstep. "Ted!" I cried out. "Nice to see you, Brad. Is Harry here?" "Yeah, he and I are playing some Brawl. Care to join us?" Ted responded with a "fuck yeah." Then he stepped inside. While playing with him was fun, his faster reflexes and greater experience with the game meant he'd beat us 8 out of 10 times. Even when we tried to team up on him. We soon switched to other games, Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness and Metroid Prime. But we soon grew bored. I figured we could pass the time by playing Yu-Gi-Oh or something. However, Ted suggested we should browse the deep web. "Isn't that dangerous?" I asked. "Yeah, Ted. We've heard stories about people going on there, then having their info leaked and strangers stalking their homes. Our brother informed us as long as we didn't commit the classic amateur deep web browsing mistakes, we'd be fine." Said mistakes were not using a VPN and not unplugging our webcam, or at least covering it up if we happened to be using a laptop, which we were. After making sure the laptop's built-in mic and webcam were covered in duct tape, we went on the deep web. For the most part, it really wasn't as exciting as we were expecting. The best thing we came across was a space shooter in which we played as a giant penis shooting sperm at spaceships. Next, we found a live stream that had a man dancing in just his underwear while rubbing cream cheese on his chest. And he had clothespins attached to his nipples. Not that I want to see anyone get killed or anything like that, but is there actually anything interesting to do on here? I asked. We can check out some more things in a bit. Right now I'm hungry though. Yeah, me too. As bizarre it is to say, I think watching this guy had made me hungry for cheese. Do you guys have any food in the kitchen? "Nah, but Mom left us some money if we wanted to order something," Harry said. I was about to propose ordering a pizza when coincidentally an ad for pizza popped up on the screen. It read, "Deep Web's Deep Dish Pizza." Huh? I kinda like the name. Should we click on it? Or do you think it may be a virus? Harry asked Ted. It might be. Do you want to risk it? What the hell? This is an old laptop anyways, I said. Ted clicked on the banner, which opened up a menu. On that menu were some of the most mouth-watering pizzas we've ever seen. Not only pizza, but also pasta, breadsticks, mozzarella sticks, and a lot of desserts among other things. Hell, even the salad looked presentable for a pizza place. Above the picture was a button that said "Order Here." We talked about what we wanted for a few minutes, and eventually, we decided on a meat lover's pizza with olives, mushrooms, and stuffed crust, mozzarella sticks, apple pie pizza, and 2 big bottles of Dr. Pepper. Just as a precaution, we decided to pay in cash and make sure we put the address in somewhere public that was close by. When we arrived at our location, which was the library down the street, we saw the delivery guy who had our order waiting by the front desk. Regular looking dude, he looked to be in his early 30s. What was odd was that he wasn't wearing a uniform or anything. He just had regular clothes on. We paid for our food, then we went outside to eat it in Ted's car. It was fucking delicious. The meat was cooked just right and the cheese was super stringy. We were busy trying some of the apple pie and mozzarella sticks when we heard someone tap the driver's window. We looked out to see the delivery guy holding up a bottle of Dr. Pepper. The food was so good we didn't even notice we were missing one. He motioned for Ted to put down his window. Ted did so. Then the man apologized for forgetting and handed Ted the Dr. Pepper. "By the way, how's the pizza?" the man asked. "This stuff kicks ass. We'll have to order from you guys more often," Ted replied. "Glad you like it. But to make up for my foolish mistake earlier, how about I give you guys something extra?" "Oh, you don't have to do that." The man insisted, and eventually we caved. We ran to his car and came back with a small box. He told us it was filled with cookies, then handed it to Ted. "Well, that was nice of him," I said, as the man walked away. "Let me get a couple of those cookies." "You got it," Ted replied, opening the box. However, instead of cookies, what we saw inside looked to be some kind of smoke grenade, and it went off, sending fumes throughout the car. The fumes must have been some kind of knockout gas because we began to feel really dizzy. The last thing I saw before passing out was the man smiling at me through the window, and unfortunately, there wasn't anyone else outside. When we woke up, we found ourselves in a musty, smelly room with a single floor lamp beaming down on us like a spotlight, but very dimly lit. We figured we must be in a basement. All 3 of us were tied up with rope in the middle of the floor. From out of the shadows appeared the man. The dim light of the lamp was the only thing illuminating his face. "Look who is finally awake," he exclaimed. "You crazy motherfucker, let us go," Ted demanded. "Let you go? I can't do that. I like to share something with the customers who appreciate my cooking." "Wait, you made those pizzas?" I asked. "Yes, I did. I run this business all by myself." "And what exactly are you going to share with us?" Harry asked. "They say, you are what you eat. So I'll make you guys into a pizza," he said, flipping a switch to turn on the overhead light. Now you may be thinking, if he had a regular light, why did he even bother with that stupid lamp? To be honest, I don't know. The man was odd, to say the least. The only thing I can think of is he did it for dramatic effect. Anyway, when he turned the light on, it revealed at least a dozen naked corpses hanging on hooks around the wall, and they each had parts missing. One girl had her head missing. The man laughed when he saw our horrified expressions. "You sick fuck," Harry cried out. "Never heard that one before. Oh, and just so you know, this is where the meat for my meat lover's pizza comes from." "Wait, so you mean that we've been eating..." "That's right, bitches. You've been eating people meat." All 3 of us started gagging. "Oh, come on. Don't throw up. I have enough cleaning to do as it is," the man said. "And I'm guessing you're gonna kill us, then make us into toppings?" I asked. "Hey, you catch on quick. Now I'll give you all a couple of minutes to decide who'll be first," the man said, sharpening a knife with his back turned. I looked over to see what my brothers were doing. It turned out Harry and Ted had found 2 shards of glass that the man must have forgotten to pick up, and they were trying to cut away their ropes with it. They both gave me a look, so I knew that I had to be the one to distract him. The man turned, sporting a wide, toothly smile and holding a large carving knife, then began walking towards us. Luckily, he couldn't see what my brothers were doing from where he was. "Wait," I said, sitting up. "What is it?" he asked, with a hint of annoyance in his voice. "I was just wondering how one gets to be a cannibalistic pizza maker." "Are you stalling?" "No, I just figured someone with such an interesting occupation must have an interesting background." "Well, it's not like anyone will be able to find us out here, I suppose. I can summarize to you guys what my life has been like." We all made sure to look at him and pretend to seem interested. "See, I grew up in a middle child of 4 brothers and 5 sisters. Everyone in my family had a natural cooking ability. That is, except for me. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't get the hang of it, something my family chastised me greatly for. So when I was 16, I did the only rational thing I could think of. I drugged my entire family, cut off parts of their flesh, then baked my first pizza using the meat. And let me tell you, it was a damn good pizza. I even made my family eat it, but they threw it up. I could tell they liked the taste of it though. And so did you guys. Did you kill your family?" "Oh, of course. And I burned all the evidence. After that, I drifted for a while, setting up my business in different places. Before I came here, I admit running things was difficult. It wasn't easy getting victims. That is until I stumbled across this deep web stuff. I must say it's very convenient and a great way for me to run things. Now, have you decided who will be first yet? Because if not, I'll decide for you." "Actually, we have," I said, feeling 2 sharp objects poke my palm. "Who will it be then?" "Shards." The man gave me a confused look that quickly turned to surprise when Harry and Ted sat up. As I laid on my side, before the man could react, they threw the shards of glass at him. One went right into his throat and the other in the face, cutting a gash right next to his eye. He staggered back, gasping as his temple and neck bled. My brothers quickly pulled off the rest of their ropes, then Ted charged the man, while Harry untied my rope. Once I was free, we joined Ted in kicking the shit out of that dude. It turned into a good old-fashioned brotherly ass-whooping. I mean, we went to town on this guy. We kicked him in the ribs for a few minutes. Then we took turns stomping on his crotch. We even did that thing where Harry got him up and held him with his arms behind his back, and Ted and I took turns gut punching him over and over until he went limp to the floor, gasping for air. As much fun as it was beating the crap out of that asshole, Harry eventually went upstairs and found a phone in the house and called the police. When they arrived, you could tell some of them were freaked out by how crazy the scene looked. A couple of detectives took our statements, while some uniformed officers wearing latex gloves started bagging evidence. 2 more officers arrested the man, noting he was lucky that 1 shard of glass didn't go any deeper into his neck. After the detectives got all the information they needed from us, another officer then gave us a ride back to the library. You know, throughout the questioning, there was one thing we all 3 forgot to mention. We still had some of that pizza left over in Ted's car. And I know we should have turned it into the police, but as crazy as that guy was, he was right about one thing. That pizza was damn good. And my brothers and I figured, why let good food go to waste? I used to be a janitor for the dark web. Some people have normal jobs, Monday through Friday, 40 hours a week, health benefits, bonuses each year, retirement funds. Well, not me. I don't have a normal job. It's not easy doing what I do, but it pays the bills since I can't get a regular job due to my criminal record. I'm a janitor that works for the dark web, and I clean up murder rooms once the buyers are done torturing and killing the victims they pay for. I've been doing it for the past 3 years. Every time someone needs help cleaning up the bloody mess they made, I go in and clean it up. I make sure there's not a single drop of blood in the room and dispose of the leftover body parts any way I could. No evidence remaining, no questions asked. In fact, I can never ask any questions. These people cannot be fucked with. I just get paid to do my job and go home like it's nothing. It's a sick job, but they would pay me very well. But that all would change one night when I started to finally question my morality. It was one night when they called me to do a job. It's always the same location, which is 40 miles from where I live. It's a rundown warehouse. I was called to clean up a room, which was really no problem at all. But I noticed or barely caught on to something I never thought twice about. As I was cleaning the room that was covered in blood, I saw a small picture on the floor. I picked it up, and it was a picture of a little girl, probably around 14 years old. This made me think right away that this was probably the victim whose blood I was cleaning up just now. It gave me an uneasy feeling inside, and for the first time, kind of disturbed me, just for the fact that these people were now using kids as their victims. But again, this was a job where no questions are asked. I put the picture in my pants pocket and continued cleaning. Once I was done, I packed up my things and quickly got out of the warehouse. I went inside my car and instantly got a call. It was them. They always call private. I answered, and they asked me if I was done cleaning up. I told them yes, and I just got into my car. They then told me that they left the money inside my glove compartment while I was inside cleaning, and they probably have another job for me in the next 2 days since they have a customer who's already waiting. I knew I shouldn't have done this, but I decided to ask, how old was she, referring to the victim. They hanged up the call. I'm sure they were pissed just with me asking. I didn't know if I could continue doing these types of jobs anymore. But I didn't know how else I could get out of this without some possible threat to my life. I got the picture of the little girl and put it resting on the passenger side. I went home that night contemplating everything. It was the next day around 9 o'clock when I got a private call. I knew it was them, and I was tempted not to answer, but I did anyway. They gave me the same location again, and to be there around 4 o'clock a.m. This time, no questions asked. Juan Miguel Santos of 3905 North 16th Street. The call hung up. This was a clear threat. Just do my job and get out of there. I would need to leave town the next morning and disappear after this. I arrived at the location and saw that there was an old brand Marquise parked outside. Usually there shouldn't be any cars but mine at the location, and got worried that maybe they were keeping a closer eye on me. I stepped outside my car and walked slowly inside, feeling more and more paranoid with each step I took. The hallways were darker than before, and I saw a light coming from the room I was supposed to go in. I entered inside, and my eyes couldn't believe what they had just seen. There was a girl in the middle of the room, tied up and gagged to a chair, alive though. The job wasn't done yet, but then I saw the body of a man laying right on the floor next to the girl, that looked to be about 16 years old. The girl began to scream at me, and I started freaking out even more. I ran to the man on the floor and checked his pulse. He was gone. This was the man that was going to kill this girl, since I saw a scalpel in his right hand. I walked myself outside into the hallway and immediately got a call. Private. It was them. Is everything okay? They knew something was up. They also had cameras in the hallways, but not the rooms. They must have seen that I was nervous. Yes, everything's okay. Finish the job and get out. We'll leave the money in your car. They hung up the phone, but they knew something was wrong. I went back inside the room, and the girl was yelling at me to help her with the gag in her mouth. I didn't know what to do. I needed to dispose of her body, but that meant I needed to kill her first. I looked around inside the man's bag, and he had several weapons and tools inside, probably to use and torture this girl. I pulled out a power drill and turned it on. The girl started to scream even more, telling me to stop. She was crying her eyes out. I put the power drill down. I couldn't do it. I took off her gag and asked what happened. She told me that the man just fell on the floor and seemed like he had a heart attack. You know that I can't let you out of here. These are dangerous people, and there are cameras everywhere inside this building. We both looked around the room. "What about him?" asked the girl. I looked at the man and saw he had a hoodie. I took it off and gave it to the girl. "Put this on and cover yourself and run as far, far away from here as you can." "I'm scared. What if they find me?" the girl said. I looked inside the man's pockets and found some car keys. They must have been for the car that was parked outside. "Here, take these keys. I think the car that's parked outside belonged to him. Whatever you do not go to the police. They will find you and they will kill you. Just go as far away from here as possible." Before she left, I asked for her name, and she said it was Crystal, and she was 17 years old. I was scared for her. I knew they might have been waiting outside for me to finish. Before she stepped outside, I looked around the lot to see if it was clear for her to go. There were only but 2 cars outside, and she quickly ran to the marquees. She said thank you and took off. I went back inside and quickly got my things. My phone started to ring. It was them. I ignored it and quickly ran to my vehicle. As soon as I was to take off, a car was approaching from behind me. The car parked right behind me and 2 men in masks stepped out. Not only that, but they opened the back seat of the car and took Crystal out. They caught her. They knew everything we had done. I should have taken off. One of the men took out a gun and pointed it at me to step outside my vehicle. I stepped out and they wanted for me to go inside. They took me and Crystal into the room with the client's dead body. I knew what they were going to do to us. Crystal couldn't stop whining and moping. This is what happens when you try and be a hero. I needed to do something before we would be dead bodies right next to the one already on the floor. I saw that Crystal was right beside the switch to turn off the lights. I looked at her and signaled my eyes to the switch to turn them off. The moment Crystal turned off the lights, I ran towards one of the masked men. Gunshots fired out as the men were yelling to turn on the lights. I grabbed the power drill that was on the floor and drilled it right into the man's chest. I stuck the drill all the way in and didn't stop until I heard the man gurgling, choking from his own blood. I got off him and heard Crystal breathing hard and yelling. I turned on the lights and witnessed Crystal stabbing the other masked man repeatedly with a scalpel in the face. Half of his mask was gone from the punctures. I got Crystal and told her to stop. She was frightened and terrified. She hugged me tight and began to cry. Both of us had made it out alive this time. We walked over to my car and took off, both of us covered in blood. The sun was coming out as it was already 6:30 in the morning. We both needed to change our identities, and I knew a guy who could do that I met from jail, and we drove over to his place right away. Sometimes I do think that maybe it would have been better off if both of us were dead, since we would now have to live in fear for the rest of our lives. Luckily, I haven't heard or seen anything, but you never know. These people always manage to find you. Let's hope they don't catch me now or for the rest of my life. Not go into the black room on the dark web. You have been warned. Last year, I did something really bad. I got onto the dark web with a few friends, and I'm telling you, it is real. There's a certain site, and I'm not going to give the full name. Let's just call it the Black Room. Me and my friends waited until their parents went to bed, and all 3 of us pulled up chairs to the computer. It was a live streaming site that said live preview. There was a black screen and people were typing into the chat box in another language. We just watched and waited for something to happen. A topless woman with long dark brown hair appeared in the chair. She was wearing blue jeans. Her hands were tied with what looked like thin blue ropes and duct tape double wrap. I guess it was to make sure she didn't get out. Her feet were cuffed together with what looked like metal leg cuffs. She had a blank look on her face. The camera flashed off to dark again. It looked like someone was covering the camera with a towel. Then I heard the sick sound of a drill being turned on. The towel was then removed. I heard her shouting in another language, probably begging for her life, screaming and crying, but she could not move. There was a shirtless man in a BDSM mask. If you don't know what that is, I suggest you just look it up. It was a black leather looking mask with eye holes and a zipper where you could zip up your mouth. She began screaming and I wanted to turn away, but curiosity got the best of me. He put the fat metal tip of the drill straight into her damn eye. It made a sickening, squishing sound, and she was moaning and screaming as the drill went directly through her eyeball. Dark red blood began oozing out, and it looked like the poor woman was going into shock. She was shaking so bad. The camera had zoomed in. Her eye was still attached and had major blunt force trauma. It looked like a big black bloody hole. Her eye was half there, somewhat. It was really hard to look at. Then the camera lens went black again. We heard 2 loud pops, which sounded like a gun. Then it was silent. No more sound, no more video. The viewing was obviously over. Oh my God, I told my friends. I just think we witnessed a murder. They shot her. They really fucking shot her. My friends and I agreed we would never watch anything like this again. I went home feeling disgusted with myself. I hoped and prayed it wasn't real. Sadly, it may have been. I promised myself no more. I would never watch anything like that again. That lasted till about next weekend. Next Saturday night, after playing the PS4 for a few hours, we began to get tired and smoked a few joints to wake us up. Then my best friend, we will call him Rob, suggested that we get on the dark web again. Rob is a computer genius and knows how to get to the dark web. He used a VPN. We decided to click on the black room again. Rob told me that only 4% of the internet is visible to the public, and 96% of the remaining is what makes up the deep web. That made me feel a bit sick to my stomach. What a disturbing thought. It took a few hours and the site wanted us to pay with Bitcoin, and we did. I don't know how we easily got in the first time without paying. I guess we just got lucky because they wanted us to pay next time. This time the screen was not black, and there was a concrete looking room and a bucket. A big heavy-set man with his white pillowcase around his head with holes cut out for the eyes and mouth. You could not see his face. He picked up the bucket and began laughing, showing us the bucket and then showing us what was in the bucket. I almost threw up. It was a bucket full of body parts, human body parts floating in this clotted red goop. I just remember seeing bloody teeth, a few fingers, and what looked like a couple of eyeballs or what was left of them. This couldn't be real, I thought. But by the way the man was laughing, it was no joke. It had to be animal parts though, I thought. Please let it be animal parts. The camera zoomed in on the bucket and there was a white piece of paper that read victim number 12. It was written in permanent marker. Was this the remains of some poor unfortunate soul who got brutalized like the first victim? Was this the remains of the poor lady we saw last week? Ugh, I really hope. I wasn't prepared for what happened next. The screen went black again, and in a chair sat another woman. This time with blonde hair, and her eyes were covered with a black scarf. She was bounded by her hands and feet with the same looking thin blue rope. I felt so sorry for her. Her waist was strapped in with some sort of belt holding her down onto the chair. A white sheet was hung up behind her. I wanted to help her, and felt like there was nothing I could do. The fat man began dipping his hands in the gooey mess and trying to shove it in the woman's mouth. She tried to hold her mouth shut, but the man got angrier and slapped her in the face. It sounded like he was telling her to eat it, eat it. She began to chew and cry, then vomited the whole mess up on her pretty white silk blouse. The chat box was going wild. People were typing in different languages and the chat box was going crazy. Then I heard it, the cranking of a chainsaw. There, standing behind the poor girl, appeared the same man from the first video. He was holding a chainsaw, shirtless, black mask and all. I got a sickening feeling to my stomach. This is not going to be good. I had seen what chainsaws do to people. Chainsaw accidents are horrible. I wanted to stop viewing right then and there, but my friends were eager to watch, and I didn't want to seem like a wuss. She was screaming her guts out, flailing, trying to get out of the chair. Good thing we all had our headphones on because this was really loud. I watched in horror as he began to try and cut off her arm. The chainsaw went through a little, then kicked back in a jerky upward motion, coming close to knocking her attacker out. He must have hit her arm bone, I thought. I think this really angered him. I could hear him screaming in another language, so I assumed he might have got nicked by the chainsaw. Suddenly, he shoved the blade directly into her stomach area. He pushed in and began to cut vertically upwards, her faint screams muffled by the chainsaw. Droplets of blood began spraying into the air onto the sheet. Little pieces of meat and tissue flew over the room. She began convulsing, and her eyes rolled to the back of her head, and she was gone. Just like that. The man slowly pulled the chainsaw out, and as he did, I could see what looked like her intestines hanging out. The screen went black. I ran to the bathroom to throw up. I think I threw up for 15 minutes. I almost passed out, too. My friends laughed at me, and I knew behind the laughter it disturbed them, too. All I know now is there are some really sick people out there in different parts of the world that will do anything on the web for money. These people have no heart or soul. They are inhumane and sick in the head. So stay off the dark web. There are just some things you can never forget that will disturb your mind forever, and you will not be able to undo what you have seen. Remember that. ClickMe.exe. I'm one of those type of people that you call introverts. So I spend all day isolated in my bedroom, laying on the bed just thinking about my future. You could say I was depressed, since I am very lonely, and you'd be right. Every day I would wake up in the afternoon and spend the afternoon just fiddling around on my computer. At night I would stay up to around 1 a.m. looking at my phone in bed. It was peaceful, you could say. By the time I go to sleep, I take hours to finally doze off since I have insomnia. This was the life that I lived, a peaceful yet unhealthy life. This one night I was on my computer doing casual stuff like watching YouTube or playing video games. After a few hours, I got pretty bored. That's when I remembered about the deep web, a certain part of the internet which has illegal contents, videos, photos, etc. It was at the bottom of the internet's iceberg. Since I was bored, I decided to hop on the deep web and check it out for the first time. After minutes of digging myself into the deep web, I was finally at the lowest point of it. I could see people being sold online, drugs, organs for sale, etc. It was disturbing to say none the less. After a while of clicking on countless links and stuff, I found a link that said clickme.exe. I'm very gullible, so I clicked on the link. It sent me to a video chat stream. There were about a couple of 100 people watching the live stream. The video showed a dark room which looked like a basement. It was unnerving. I couldn't take my eyes off of it, so I kept watching the video. Then after a few minutes, someone turned the camera sideways and my heart dropped. The camera showed a girl who looked to be in her 20s. She was tied up to a chair with ropes all over her body, and I could hear her screams being muffled by duct tape over her mouth. My chest tightened. The whole chat box was rushing with messages. Everyone was saying killer in the chat. My heart started pounding. This was a murder stream. Then, the person behind the camera stepped out into the shot. He wore a black hoodie with a ski mask which kept him anonymous. The man then gestured a thumbs up and reached into his pocket and took out a large switchblade. My eyes widened as the man held the blade up against the girl's neck. I knew what was going to happen since the chat was spamming kill her and slit her throat. The man in one swift motion slit the woman's throat as blood gushed out. I was hyperventilating in fear. The video then started glitching and buffering until it finally stopped. I immediately closed the tab and exited the web browser. My hands were shaking in fear. I was heavily disturbed by what I saw. The following night I tried to doze off, but I couldn't. My mind was replaying the same images of that woman's throat getting slit. You'd think this is where the story ends, but you'd be wrong. I just left my house to get groceries since I was running out of food in the fridge. While I was strolling with my shopping cart in the cereal aisle, I remember getting hit in the head with a hard object. My vision slowly started blacking out until I passed out. I woke up in a basement with water dripping on my head. I gazed around to see countless dead, lifeless bodies on the floor in their pools of blood. Their bodies were mutated and their bones were broken and dislocated. My heart sank into my stomach. There were also dozens of weapons hung on the walls with large nails. The weapons were also covered in blood. I tried to scream and move, but I couldn't since I was tied to a chair with ropes and my mouth was covered in duct tape. I tried to frantically escape by knocking down the chair, but to no avail. Then I saw the basement door open and saw the silhouette of a man walking down the stairs. My heart started racing in fear. The man walked to me and took out his phone and placed it on the table in front of me. That's when I realized what was about to happen. Man then started to start a live stream on his phone, and I could see countless people joining. I was about to get killed on stream just like how that woman did on the deep web. Tears started pouring down my cheeks. The man wore the same clothes as he did in the live stream of the woman's death. The man then spoke to the viewers on the live stream. "How should I kill him?" he said with a deep and cracky voice. After a few seconds, the man said, "Torture him? Pretty good choice, but first I will cause him pain." The man then started walking towards the large sledgehammer that was hung up on the wall. He took it and walked back to me. I knew he was going to hit me with it, so I braced for impact. The man swung the sledgehammer to my stomach with brute force. It was so painful. I could barely breathe after he'd done that. He then kept hitting me with the sledgehammer repeatedly until I was knocked out. I recall waking up in what looked like a cell that had no windows and only one eerie yellow light on the ceiling. I woke up groaning in pain from the bruises and cuts from the sledgehammer. I was wearing what looked like hospital patient clothes that reeked of the smell of blood. The clothes were old and were stained. I then heard footsteps coming towards me. It was that man again. "Let me the hell out," I screamed at him. He stayed silent. The man kept staring at me. Then he took off his hood and ski mask and I could finally see his face. He looked like he was in his mid-20s. He was bald and had cuts and bruises on his face. He even had an unsettling grin that spread from cheek to cheek. It sent shivers down my spine. "Listen, Daniel, I ain't gonna let you out anytime soon," he said. My heart skipped a beat. How did this guy know my name, I thought. "How the hell do you know my name?" I said as I stammered on my words in shock. "Well, as they say, a magician never tells his secrets," and he let out a crackle. "Who the hell are you?" I said, grasping onto the steel bars. "I'm Devin. Nice to meet you." "Get me out of here, you freak." "Daniel, the more you speak to me with that attitude, the more I'm gonna have to hurt you. You're a sicko." "Well, here's your dinner," Devin said, as I saw he was holding a plate. He crouched down and slid the plate under the bars into my cell. There was a dead rat with its head decapitated on the plate. Blood everywhere on the plate. I gagged at the sight. "Eat up," Devin said. I covered my mouth to prevent myself from vomiting. "Or I'm gonna have to shove it down your throat," Devin said. He opened the cell and walked in. Devin took the rat's head and threatened to shove it down my throat. I backed up to the back of the cell. "Hold still," Devin said. He then caught a grab of my throat and was choking me. He then shoved the rat into my mouth and I felt the organs and the hairs of the rat get caught in my throat. I gagged and vomited all over Devin. "You prick," Devin said. He let go of my neck and punched me in the face. I almost got knocked out. "Breakfast is tomorrow, Daniel." Devin walked out of the cell with the plate in his hand. I fell to the floor in pain and had blood trickling down my nose. From that day on, I was being fed live animals, dead animals, bugs, fish, etc. I was also tortured every day in different ways, from sledgehammers to chainsaws to my arms. It felt like hell every day. Then after what seemed like years and years of torture, a miracle happened. The cops showed up. Devin was arrested, He was already on the wanted list for the past 6 years. I was gone missing for only 2 months, which had felt like years. I was immediately escorted to a hospital since half my joints were gone or broken. I'm 35 now and I have a child. This experience has traumatized me to the core, and every time I see an animal, I will always remember being fed raw animal. It's been 10 years and I still remember to this day. I've been taking medication and therapy to forget about this, but I don't really think it's working. And needless to say, I will never, ever go on the deep web again.